I would like to talk to those of you who are doing very well on that first low carbohydrate stage of the diet, that quick weight loss phase. And you've probably noticed some very wonderful things already. I'm sure you've noticed by now that you're not as hungry, that you don't crave things, that you have more energy, and that you enjoy what you're eating. And you're beginning to think, boy, this diet, this is going to do it. I've found my diet. I've found the answer. This is going to get me to my goal weight. And you may be thinking, I would hope you're thinking about some of your past experiences, your other diets, why they failed. Maybe now you have some insight as to why they do. How many times did you go on a diet and get to either your goal weight or whatever the lowest weight was that you got to, saying to yourself, oh, I can't wait till I'm off this diet? Well, that is the kiss of death to a dieter. The kiss of success to a dieter is arriving at your goal weight, eating in such a way that you wouldn't want to eat any differently. And that's what we're going to accomplish. I wanted you to keep that goal in mind as we begin to talk about how we go through the various stages of the diet getting to that goal. But let's pick up where you are now. You're about to get to that point, and you want to start with the first step to get there. And the first step is the part that's so important to you, because this is what makes you different from someone else. You're an individual, and every individual has a different critical carbohydrate level for losing. I've used that term CCLL. I'll never use it again perhaps, but remember that. You have a level if you stay below a level of carbohydrates, you will have an automatic weight loss. Now the question is, what is your level? This is our strategy. We're going to add a little bit of carbohydrates level by level until you get to a point where it's not working as well as it is now. So this is how we do that. Go to your diary. Look at what you said about how hungry you were, how much cravings you had, how much energy you had, and all the other changes in your physical well-being. Now that means you are well below your critical carbohydrate level. Now as you write down stage by stage what happens to your appetite, what happens to your cravings, and you see you lose the benefits, that means you have approached and perhaps exceeded your critical carbohydrate level and must back down. So that's our strategy. We're going to add little by little to the diet, but we're going to add in such a way that you never go past the level in which the diet doesn't work for you. Add carbohydrates back in slowly. Observe how these foods make you feel. If you add too many carbohydrates back in, your weight loss will slow down. Okay, so this is our strategy. You are going to add foods which, for two reasons. Number one, you should add healthy foods. So you want to add the healthiest food you can add. Number two, you should add the foods you like, you want, and the foods that you miss. So now we're looking for foods that are healthy, good for you, and they're the ones that you really want to add. So let's look at to see if there are any foods which qualify as both. Are there any foods that you know are good for you, like broccoli, that you miss? Add it in now, because that's where we're going to go. Let me give you some guidelines for adding. My favorite foods for adding to the first level as we begin to expand the diet are nuts and seeds. They truly are very, very good for you, and they are relatively low in carbohydrates. Now, some nuts are much lower in carbohydrates than others. At the top of my list would be macadamia nuts, walnuts, pecans, filberts. At the bottom of the list, so low at the bottom that we wouldn't even do it, would be things like cashew nuts or chestnuts. They're very high in carbohydrate. Secondly, there are the other vegetables, the ones that you cook, the broccoli, the string beans, the Brussels sprouts. They're all good for you too. Tomatoes, wonderful, they're very good for you. Contain a lot of lycopene. These are the things that you may want to add, and you should. But do it in the following way. Pick something which adds up to 5 grams of carbohydrate per day. Add 5 grams of carbohydrate per day as you go through the next stage. Meanwhile, ask yourself, am I just as non-hungry as I was? Am I just as energetic as I was? Are my cravings as well under control as they were? And if the answer is yes, you can be sure that you're still considerably below your critical carbohydrate level for losing. In which case, 5 days later, 10 days later, it depends on how much weight you have to lose. The more you have to lose, the longer you should wait before you add to the diet. But when you get to that point, pick another 5-gram addition, or get rid of the 5-gram addition which you had and find a 10-gram addition. And so you do the same thing again. You ask yourself, am I non-hungry, not craving, having more energy, feeling better in every way? And there are a lot of other good things that happen if you happen to have high blood pressure or high blood sugar. They are controlled, and you know they are because you can check them. So you have a lot of ways of knowing that the diet is still working.
Slowly add foods back in. If you feel bad, you've added too many carbohydrates too soon, so cut back. Add vegetables first, then nuts and seeds, then fruits, and then starches, and finally grains. Consult your personal diet manual over and over again.
In order to do this, we've actually made it pretty easy for you. Go to your basic diet manual and you will see suggestions as to which sequence works best for adding to the diet. After the nuts and seeds and the vegetables, fruit is a very interesting concept. There are some fruits which are not that high in carbohydrate and very good for you. Strawberries and raspberries, very good. Melon, also. Peaches, plums, nectarines if they're fresh, apricots if they're fresh, wonderful. They belong in the addition list. And then there's that glass of red wine that people talk about that's supposed to be so good for you. The reason it's supposed to be so good for you is because studies have shown that a glass of red wine before dinner actually does improve the health. So it is a consideration for an addition. And then we get to another category, starches. Not to just pick up a baked potato or a loaf of bread, but there are starches in recipes. There are fried fish, fried calamari, there's Wiener Schnitzel, things of that nature. These belong as possible additions. Sometimes there's the occasional skinny little French fry that you want to sneak into your mouth. If it'll satisfy you, you could do it here. So this is the sequence for adding, bearing in mind that you are looking for the continuation of all the benefits that you got from the strict level. And as long as you're getting that, and by the way, I think there's one other thing you may want to do, check out the scale, but more than the scale would be a tape measure. Make sure that you're confirming that inches are coming off from the parts of your body that you'd like them to come off from.
Make sure you don't trigger symptoms by adding in too many carbohydrates. Measure yourself frequently and record your progress. Approach weight loss scientifically. Observe how carbohydrates make you feel. Track and record your personal observations.
Okay, you've just seen the many possibilities there are for adding to the diet. Now here's the caveat. Make sure you don't add too much, too fast, too soon. That's how you can get in trouble. And this is how that would happen. You would get yourself out of ketosis and stop the stability of your blood sugar. Remember this, that it is your stored body fat which stabilizes your blood sugar, and if you're not burning it anymore because you were a little bit careless and went too fast, then your blood sugar won't be stabilized, and you can have a return of all of the symptoms which you thought you had gotten rid of once and for all. So we're not going to do that. We're going to add carefully. Let me give you the understanding of why that is. Blood sugar is the key, and blood sugar is destabilized by carbohydrate. So that any carbohydrate, a sugar, of course, you probably learned that very quickly, does it, but so does a starch. What does protein do? I'm talking about the white meat of chicken without the skin. Actually does nothing. Protein itself is not a fuel. Protein acts as a fuel partly by breaking down into carbohydrates and partly by breaking down into fat. It itself is neutral. The only food division that stabilizes your blood sugar is dietary fat. And this is very, very important. If you find yourself out of ketosis with an unstable blood sugar and your symptoms are back, your mood changes and your energy symptoms and your cravings are back, then remember this. You should start from the very beginning. Go back to the original diet, the strictest version of the diet, even a high-fat version of the diet. Then do that for just a day or two. You don't have to do it for a long time. In 1 or 2 days, you will have corrected the imbalance created by going off the diet. This, of course, applies to times when you've just blown it. It wasn't deliberate. You just blew it. Went on a vacation, went to a wedding, went to whatever, and you were definitely off the diet. Here's the strategy. You've heard people say, well, if that happens, then just dust yourself off, pick yourself up, and start all over again. And that's exactly what you do. You don't allow a mistake to turn into a tragedy. What you do is start from the beginning as soon as possible. As soon as you recognize that you're off the diet, get yourself back on and do it by going on the initial phase of the diet. Forget all the things that have been added along the line. Don't go back to your maintenance diet. Start over from the strict diet, the strictest of all the diets. However, here's the good news. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days tops should get the job done. And then you can go back to where you left off.
What to do if you blow it? Go back to the maximum fat-burning phase. Get yourself back in ketosis. Eat high-fat foods for a day or two to stabilize your blood sugar. Above all, don't let a mistake turn into a tragedy. Put personal control back in.
Okay, there's another thing you should know. You know, I practice preventive medicine, and you could practice prevention as well. Suppose you know you're going to a party or going on a vacation. There are things that you can do to prevent even going off the diet in the first place. Now, this is very important. Let's say you're going to take a trip. One of the things that happens is you get on the plane gets on the runway, they're not allowed to serve you food, and you're in trouble. Make sure that if you're taking a plane ride, that you have eaten before you get on the plane. Also make sure that you have packed with you in your carry-on something like macadamia nuts, something like one of the protein bars, very, very low in carbohydrate, that will serve to get you through whatever happens on that trip. And that's true of any trip that you take, and it's true of a lot of outings that you might take as well. Now, let's say you're going to a party, a wedding, and you absolutely know for sure you're going to have the wedding cake. What do you do then? Well, one of the things that I found most useful is if you know you're going and you know it's going to be off the diet, to eat considerable before you ever get there, so that at least you walk into the room not very hungry. You'll be amazed at how much sales resistance you have when you've already eaten. These are just some of the things that you can do to make sure you don't have the problem that's going to ask you to start over. But either way, starting over is the best remedy for a mistake. And in my life, I've been on the diet for 36 years. I've had to start over more times than I care to tell you about. But I always do it, and it always works, and it'll always work for you. Now, there's one other thing I should warn you about. There are an awful lot of people who would be classified as naysayers, people who will tell you that this diet is not what you notice it to be. They will tell you that you're not losing weight, that all you're losing is water, that you don't feel better, that you are hungry, and that all you're losing is protein and muscle, and that you're not losing all the fat that you noticed you lost when you measured yourself. Now, there are an awful lot of people like that. The press is for one. A lot of people who don't look in depth into new discoveries are very prone to tell you things of that nature. I have had, over the years, many people go off the diet that was working beautifully for them just because someone of lesser experience told them that they should go off. Now, you must guard against that. You will hear these remarks, and you must learn that you have the capacity to judge what works for you.